Well, unfortunately, you could have the best product or service out there, but if nobody knows about it, it does not matter. And then you're watching your competition and you're like, wait a minute, but we do this, that better. And they market. They focus on marketing. They put a good chunk of their revenue toward marketing. And that's why they're winning.
Welcome to Digital Dominance. I went from building HTML websites in high school to helping 7- and 8-figure service businesses generate more revenue through better design, SEO, and marketing. On this podcast, I bring you expert tactics and tools to help you turn your online presence into your biggest sales asset. If you want someone on your team to help you navigate the world of digital marketing, head over to FroBro.com. What if your most valuable marketing asset isn't your budget, your product, or even your strategy, but your story? Now, today's guest, Bofta Yimam, is an Emmy-winning journalist turned business owner who helps brands step into the spotlight with clarity, confidence, and conviction. Through her agency, StoryLead, Bofta has helped clients craft magnetic stories that cut through the noise and position them as leaders in their industries. So in this episode, we're going to dive into why visibility is earned through narrative, not noise, and how business owners can start showing up in a way that drives influence, impact, and ultimately income. Bofta, welcome to Digital Dominance.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And, Bofta, I know you've helped some big names get crystal clear on their message, but I want to zoom out for a second. When you say visibility is power, what kind of visibility are we even talking about? Because a lot of business owners, they're posting, but they're still basically invisible.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think that's exactly when the clients come to us. It's like, wait a minute, I am posting 3 times a week, but it's not working. So there's strategic visibility, and then there's just plain visibility. So a lot of what folks are doing is just putting something out there. I wouldn't necessarily call that strategic visibility. I wouldn't even call that visibility. That's just putting noise out there. But when you're weaving thought leadership, your story, and you're weaving it together, that's when you're going to get people to pay attention. We know that people don't really get attracted to statistics without there being some context or story behind it. Or if you're just talking industry jargon, not interested. But if you start to tell how you got into this industry, impact, start telling, making full sense and connecting why you are here in said industry and how you got there, and telling stories about your own journey, and then weaving in your thought leadership with it, that's what's going to get you the strategic visibility that makes you want to share things, adding value, of course, the marketplace, value, but through storytelling and through thought leadership. And I want to say this too, I'm not against a post where you're like, hey, I just got this award, or, I am being celebrated for something in my life. Hey, I am not against that. But every post cannot be that, right? Because all you're doing is talking about me, and the audience is really looking at, as a thought leader, if that's how you want to be seen, they want you to come out and they want you to say, okay, well, what's this for me? What value can you add to my business? And that's what's going to help you get a little bit further.
Yeah. And I think I also wonder, do people hide behind those statistics? I liked how you mentioned, no, people don't care about that unless there's a story that makes it relatable or make it make sense. And it made me think of back when people were posting blog articles, when blogs were still getting started, and people started posting infographics. And now suddenly like, hey, that makes a lot of sense. And you could see the path between these stats and how they were related, and giving, a visual representation of the numbers. Suddenly people can get it and share it and like it. And I thought that was an example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, there are people who still read long blog articles and white papers. It's just fewer and far between than it has been probably, compared to 5 years ago. But there are some industries, especially some more dense industries. Energy comes to mind, for example, where they do read a white paper if they see that a client wrote it. They may be interested in that because they're looking for very niche, specific type of information, but not every industry is like that. And that's where your marketing comes into play. Is you have to know what your industry is doing, what your thought leaders are doing, and what they'd be most likely to read. And that's the job of, hopefully, the marketer.
Yeah. And also where in the pipeline that person's at, where in the buyer journey. Because if they're just starting, they're probably not ready to read the white paper yet. So don't put that front and center on your homepage. Maybe put it further in, where after they've gone through some stuff, then they get there and it makes sense when they're actually considering a purchase or something like that.
Right. Absolutely.
So I want to know also, what do you think, we mentioned maybe people hide behind stats, but are there other things that hold people back from telling their story in business? Is it the fear of being too personal, or just not knowing where to start, or feeling like it's irrelevant? What do you think?
I think the know-how and the confidence. So a business owner may be extremely confident in what they do, but the confidence in how to craft my story in a way where I'm not feeling like I'm kind of throwing up on people and like saying everything that's happened in my life. And they're still the thought leader. So there's this protective, kind of layer that they want to make sure that is there. And I don't blame them, because you should be telling your audience everything that's happened to you since you were, 2 years old. We don't need to know everything that's happened to you since you were a little toddler. But we do want to know some key, and I like to call it transformational moments, like moments that actually changed you, shaped your values, shaped your journey, shaped maybe your trajectory in your career or your business. And sometimes those transformational moments are like, hey, I fell into a ton of debt, that I had to get out of this debt in order to launch this $10 million business, or whatever it might be, right? But sometimes you have to talk a little bit about a pain you went through in order to remind people that you're human. So it's, again, not all about celebration and win. Those are okay for engaging, quick engagements, but you do want to have something of substance where you're telling them a transformational moment. I think I like to share this, Jeffro, if people can narrow it down, like you went from this to that, so you went from, living in your parents' basement and launching a startup in AI to being on a main stage with Gary Vee at boom, boom, boom. Right. Just tell us a transformational type of moment that you went from this to that. You went from, sometimes it's money, $4,000 in your bank account and your savings that you use to launch your business, to creating a boom, boom, boom. So sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's an actual environment that changed for you that's transformational. Sometimes it's a career, right? So it just depends on who you are and what you've gone through. Or somebody could say, we had a client, going from being a product of a workforce development pipeline to building a workforce development company that helps diverse communities, right, in rural America. So just telling people a little bit of a snapshot. And then you can go into more of the details and the weeds as you build up that story and connect the dots. But you do want to remind people in your audience about how you got there. And I think a lot of people forget to do that. Oh, I've been on LinkedIn for 2 years. Well, remind people who may have just been starting to connect with you or at that last conference, who you are, what you're about, besides the celebratory wins. And I harp on that a lot, Jeffro, because that's what I see. I see celebrations, awards, certifications, like good. But if you want to be a thought leader, you have to think of value add.
So, I like that. I agree. One thing that I see, there's a running joke on LinkedIn. People post like, hey, this is what Wifey My Toddlers Knows at 2 a.m. taught me about B2B synergy in the enterprise space. And it's like, wait, what? And it's kind of like this whiplash of like, this is a very forced, like transitioned into a business lesson or something. How do you avoid doing that where the story feels authentic and actually makes sense for what you're talking about?
I mean, we have a seasoned team of writers who've been doing this for more than 10 years. So like I want to say like we have the experience in the craft of writing. And so we would look at it and say that does sound forced before posting. I think the average person who's writing and who wants to put something about it, make sure that you first think about why somebody would care about your toddler and the connection. And are you doing it in a way where, as you mentioned, it doesn't feel like it's natural. It feels like you're trying to get my engagement, right? It's like, okay, you're talking about my kids, so automatically I'm going to be engaged with what you have to say. When that's not the case, especially anymore, because you're right, the audience got used to that one line about, this is what I learned about, I don't know, going on vacation with my family of 10, right? So I think part of it has to be just sometimes you just do the personal post, just share a moment with your toddler if you want to. And then other times, I think it's important where you do connect it. Like your toddler can teach you something, but then you have to write it in a compelling way. And on LinkedIn specifically, your first, as 200 characters really matter because that's the lead that's going to make people want to click that more option, then making them want to kind of read the rest of the post. Sometimes what I tell people is usually the last line of your post should be your lead. Like a lot of people literally bury the lead. So I'm like, read your post, walk away, get coffee, come back, and then just see if the last sentence should probably be your first. It's probably your most engaging.
Yeah, it's going to hook people in a lot faster because you're getting right to the point and then filling in the details.
Exactly. So really reverse engineering the post can help people who are listening to this podcast right now. It's like if you look at your last, 5-10 posts, and then that might give you content creation for the next, month or so where you're just reversing some of the posts you've already done maybe 6 months ago, which I'm not against either. And putting a different photo or a different graphic element that could help revive that post so you can repeat it. A lot of people are like, I don't repeat content. I'm like, why not? What are you talking about? Why wouldn't you repeat great content, especially content that's worked with your audience? Repeat it. No one's looking at you that hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said before,
Like
storytelling isn't just fluff, it's strategy, right? So you're not just telling a story for the sake of telling it. And you also at the same time aren't telling it to immediately get clients from that post about your toddler necessarily, right? So you kind of have to walk this line and find the balance where, messaging works for you, but it's also authentic. And can you tell us, in your experience, have you seen like someone make that transition and that shift in messaging where they're approaching it differently and kind of what you see from that?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I recommend, again, just to anyone who's watching this, is like, hey, I want to boost my LinkedIn. It's to really think about the themes that you want to concentrate on to laser focus your messaging. So, Jeffro, a theme could be confidence. It could be empowerment. It could be courage. It could be joy. But think of themes that align with your brand. So let's say you come up with 5 themes. Then you want to start to think of transformational moments that align with those themes, right? So what are that avoids some of the content that I think isn't working on LinkedIn, because now you're thinking strategically. What are themes that I actually align with? What are values? And then how do I create some transformational moments that I can think about? So it's going to take some time because you've got to brainstorm a list of moments that you've gone through. And for some people, they're like, well, I don't want to talk about when I went through depression. Okay, cool. You don't have to talk about that, but you could talk about something that when you came out of it, or you could talk about, if it was a really pivotal moment, if you want to share that. If you don't want to share that, that's fine. Pick something else. But most of the messaging that you probably see on LinkedIn too, it's very far away. So like I don't get to know the business owner by reading their content. And I should be able to get a feel of that business owner. I should be able to understand, do they have family? What are they about? Oh, they care about this. Oh, they live in this area. I should know something about you, because what you're really doing with the content is building, through the strategic visibility and storytelling, you are building trust. You're building brand awareness, if you want to get into terminology, right? But you're really just building trust and authority that, hey, you can trust me. You can believe in me. And I'm putting out content that validates some of the things we're doing, whether it's through client case studies, which should also be, I would add, some type of story. Those are very easy. You could do that in the before, during, and after. Folks, think of a movie. When you're telling a movie and you're telling your kids what happened in that movie or that cartoon. Remember when they did this and they did this? Keep it simple. Before, during, and after. A lot of times I think we overcomplicate it. And so I know it's like a roundabout way of your question, but I think part of the way to get to messaging and doing it well is making sure that you're connecting the themes. If anyone follows, she's not a client of mine, so I'm really just bragging about her, but Sarah Blakely, who founded Spanx and now has another new company. A lot of people, will tell me, who have smaller businesses, significantly smaller businesses than Sarah Blakely or her husband, who's also very successful. They'll say, I don't know, it feels like it's all about me, Bofta, and shouldn't it be about my organization? Leverage yourself, you, who they often buy from, to bring business to the organization, right? You are an extension, or your organization, I should say, is an extension of you, the business owner. And so I think it's a huge mistake, because if you look at what successful business owners are doing, they're not quieting down because they have a business. Gary Vee, Sarah Blakely, Kim K, whether you like her or not, they're leveraging the personal brand to drive visibility to what they do as a business owner, which is extremely smart, especially in this day and age, because people want to buy off people they trust. So I think one of the things that you asked at the beginning is like, what holds people back? Is this misconception, is this myth they have that talking about me takes away from the organization, be it nonprofit or profit. They have this idea that if you talk too much about me, it's all about me, and what about my team? I'm like, you can weave all of that in, but you got to stop thinking that you can't drive business, because you're already driving business. You're the one at the conferences, you're the one probably doing some business development if you're the founder and still running the company right now as president, CEO, etc. So it's amazing to me that people think that talking about their journey is somehow going to misdirect people about what their organization is about, or, harm the branding. It's just, I'm like, it's 2025. Got to get out there.
Well, and I think people have been bombarded with commercials and ads day in, day out for so long. Like, people are actually craving the personal connection, to hear the stories of real people instead of something that feels forced or, polished up as a business post, or something that run through ChatGPT. Like, we want the real authentic stories, and we're drawn to those right now more than ever. So I think, if anything, you should really be embracing that and kind of, yes, build your personal brand, not just so that you can't talk about your business, but so that you can do it from a place that's real and authentic and interesting.
That's right. And inspiring and informative. Exactly. And all of those things. And you know what else feels forced now that, you're talking about it? I was just on LinkedIn earlier. what else feels forced is like a call to action after every post, and it's like telling this amazing story or this thought leadership. And it's like, you had to drop the call to action, didn't you? It's like, can you just let that thing sit? Folks, let it sit for a second. Just let that last sentence sit and breathe. Guess what? They know how to find you because they're going to DM you, I mean, so I'm not saying that you shouldn't promote, but it shouldn't be every post, make it every several posts where you're really putting and then make it a strong call to action, and a strong call to action has one thing that you're really pushing and you're telling them where to go, website, DM you, and you're talking about the result they will get from it, but really be strategic about even that call to action. So I see that a lot in our content, that's out there, that's like, okay, now I'm driving business because I'm on LinkedIn and this is how I have to do it. It just does not feel authentic.
Yeah. Okay. So another question, let's say someone's like, all right, I want to do this, but my story is not that interesting. I don't really have anything to share that people would care about. What would you say to that person?
Let's say you haven't sat down with it enough. Everyone, and at StoryLead, we really believe that everyone has a story and it matters, but not everyone knows how to craft a compelling story weaved in with thought leadership. And so what I would say is, hey, you've got a compelling story, but it's you. So you may not give it credit. You may brush it aside. You may undervalue the achievements that you've had or the experiences that you've gone through. And until you really extract it, literally have somebody interview you and extract it to figure out what are the threads, what are the themes, pieces of your journey, you're always going to think that you're boring or you don't have anything because you're not willing to sit with it. Now, others who feel like, I know I have a story, I don't know how to do it. Those are the folks who I would say kind of go through that exercise I talked about earlier, just think the themes and transformational moments and so forth. And we do that work with our clients, and they find it almost therapeutic because they didn't see themselves as, they've done amazing things. They didn't see themselves as, what we see them as, like really big, amazing rock stars in their field.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned sitting down with someone to help extract it, because I think a lot of people need that, not just for their own story, but even like the vision for their own business. Like they kind of just assume people are going to get it. Like, hey, my work should speak for itself, or like this thing is like, it's way better than everybody else. Like, obviously. And it's like, well, no, maybe it's not obvious.
Well, unfortunately, you could have the best product or service out there, but if nobody knows about it, it does not matter. It's not going to bring in revenue. And then you're watching your competition and you're like, wait a minute, but we do this, that better. And they market. They focus on marketing. They put a good chunk of their revenue toward marketing. And that's why they're winning. It's not necessarily that they're the best out there. And I would prefer that all the best products and services be the only thing that wins. But the reality is that marketing does matter. I mean, you've got to have marketing and sales, blood flow of your business. So if you're not doing the marketing, most people, I think, understand that at a certain point in their business and I'm in the DMV, a lot of folks are, government, 90% government, that's feeding their business, or 80%. And so what they realize, though, is that they have not focused on their brand, and because they just do RFPs all day. And when they realize is that how much that's hurting them, because even folks who are going after RFPs or meeting with corporate, contractors or category managers, procurement folks, guess where they're going? They're going to LinkedIn to see if you are real. So they're looking at the profile. They're seeing if that person is active. And I've had people say this. I just did a workshop earlier this week for T. Rowe Price, and they mentioned that at the workshop, that don't forget small and medium-sized businesses to make sure that your online presence, website, LinkedIn is uniform. And folks think that they're not looking. And I'm like, they're looking. They're looking, and either subconsciously or consciously, there are decisions being made about you based on the content and your profile that you're putting out there. So to underestimate and to push marketing for LinkedIn to the side and your story and who you are, I think it's just a huge disservice to a lot of businesses who think they don't need to focus on that stuff right now. I'm like, well, your competition will, and you're going to wonder what's happening when you're not getting the results that you're seeking to achieve your goals.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a long-term strategy. Like marketing yourself and putting yourself out there with your stories, it doesn't change overnight. Like you're not going to suddenly get an influx of clients tomorrow because you shared one post on LinkedIn.
One post. Yeah.
Right. So you kind of just have to embrace this mentality that this is now how I have to walk into the future, positioning myself, the way I do business, the way I interact with people every day. That's going to pay dividends over time. It's not just going to be something that you can look at in a week and say, all right, what's the ROI now? Next month, is it doing well? Like kind of eventually you can look back and see how it started to influence, but it's not a direct line.
Right. And some also forget too, I think it's a good point, Jeffro, that, this is a social platform. So you do need to engage if you really want to see results on, look, make a list of 50 prospects you want to connect with and make sure, yes, they're following you, but make sure you're engaging on their posts. The algorithms favor that. So you need to spend some time engaging with other people on the platform, and you need to make sure you're adding new eyeballs. So content will carry you to a certain extent. But if you're not adding new eyeballs to the platform, you're speaking to the same audience, and they're going to get tired. So that's audience fatigue, right? So we have to make sure that you're doing all three of those components, strategic visibility, strong content, adding new eyeballs, and of course, getting into DM, making sure you're doing that connections and engaging with people and supporting their content too in a genuine way, right? Like in a genuine and authentic way. And so I think when you're doing all of that, you do drive business. And what we hear from a lot of clients is, I had a client or prospect who 3 years ago worked with me, and then I started posting more, and then they came back. And we thought the proposal for 6 figures was dead in the water, and then they came back after seeing our visibility. And like, true story, we had a client that went through that. And then the other thing that they'll say is, maybe I can't say exactly it was a LinkedIn post, but I do know that I'm getting compliments every time I get on the call, my sales calls about what I'm doing on LinkedIn. And they're like, how do you have the time to do this? And they, of course, they're not, saying, oh, I have a whole ghostwriting team behind me. But that's what people are doing. They're getting smart about it because it is a lot of work. If you're doing it right, it's quite a bit of time, right? Like if you're doing it the right way, it's going to take you or somebody on your team or externally time and some expertise, of course.
Yeah, especially if you want to do this long term, like you have to have a plan for it and a team or a structure around it, because otherwise you'll burn out real fast. You'll post a few videos and be like, okay, never mind. It's not worth it.
Exactly. And you're just like, you'll be like, I can't do this anymore, coffee or something. Just walk away.
Okay. So you've worked with both individuals and larger corporations, obviously. Those have very different budgets and goals and everything. But is there one thing that small business owners can kind of borrow from the big brands that you've worked with, lessons or tactics that you would encourage them to embrace?
That's such a good question. I think that they revisit their branding strategy more often than a small or medium-sized business does. So I think that they do come up with a strategy and they're pretty married to it and they go hard with that strategy. But I think they're just willing to revisit it and ask, like, is this working? And if they have a strong internal team, they're consistently reevaluating it. They're wondering, are we making headway with it? So I just think that they have the team, right? And they have the resources to be able to do that. But I think that's a good and healthy practice within small businesses to also ask ourselves, like, why is this strategy working? Oh, it's because I'm not engaging, on the platform. Or what is it I'm not doing? So what's working, what's not working? And just really keeping up with any KPIs. They're thinking about measurable results, and they're thinking about their strategy as a whole more often.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And another thing I'll put out there, especially for me as a small business owner, I've been personally trying to improve my storytelling, and I've been posting a lot of stuff that just doesn't work. And so I get to learn a lot of lessons. So you have to kind of be okay with it not being perfect or successful the first time and just start doing it. Like you said, if it's a long-term strategy, you have to allow yourself to make mistakes along the way so that you can ultimately refine it.
Right. And marketing is experimental. So I love that you're trying it. You're like, hey, that didn't, go so well. Wonder why. Maybe it was my lead. Maybe it was I didn't have a photo or a cool video attached, right? So you're just looking at it and evaluating, but you're doing it from a very objective lens, not putting yourself down. You're just thinking, okay, well, what can I do better? And I think that's really smart. And that's something that a lot of business owners need to do more of. It's like treat it as an experiment, so that you're not feeling down when, you've done 4 posts and it didn't, go viral or something like that, So I applaud you. I applaud you that you're trying to put out there. And what I would tell, something else that business owners can do is to look at other people and look at the structure of their post and see if you can emulate some of that. So start to look at posts that you do, tend to gravitate toward, or people you tend to follow, and look at the structure of their posts and how they're doing it. You'll notice that they spread out their sentences, that they're not always ending with a call to action, that they have a very strong opening, that they usually have a compelling photo if it's going to be a very strong post. They're not going to waste a strong written content post and the structure of it on something that probably doesn't have a photo, unless they're a very good writer or have a great team. So they're really thinking about the visual as well. They're not making it all about them, right? They're just like paying attention to people you follow and things that are cool that they do, and their lead, their first 200 characters, what are they talking about? And how are they pulling you in that hook? And I think that that's where you'll start to see, okay, that's where I could improve for most people.
Yeah, no, I love that. I've definitely tried implementing things that other people are doing and making it my own, which I think is an important piece of that, right? Because otherwise it's not going to connect if you are forcing it through someone else's lens.
Absolutely.
But thank you, Bofta, for being here today. We're coming to the end of our time. I really appreciate this conversation. I wish we could keep talking because this has been really helpful, hopefully for you guys listening as well. And if you guys want to connect with Bofta or learn more about her agency, StoryLead, the links will be in the show notes. So let's wrap up with one last question for you. What's one small storytelling shift that a business owner can make this week to start attracting the right kind of visibility?
A small shift that they could do. Well, talk about why. Talk about why you got into this business, but structured at the very top with something compelling. So example would be in 1999, I took my life savings and started a business called Boom, Boom, Boom. Today it's today we have, right, to show the growth, like how many employees. And then, but what you may not realize is, and then talk about the why, why I started this was because I wanted this and I hope to achieve this. And so even if you started a business 2 years ago, you could still use that framework. But timelines, Jeffro, are very powerful. I think everyone here could look at a small shift would be to think about your timeline and you're connected to your why inside of one post.
I love that. And yeah, just try it, guys. See how it goes. Then make it better next time. Well, thanks again, both. And thanks to all of you guys for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a second to leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps more business owners discover how to achieve digital dominance in their industries. That's it for now. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again. Thanks for listening to Digital Dominance. If you enjoyed this episode, would you do me a big favor and leave a review? It really helps more service business owners discover the show, fix their websites, and grow their businesses the right way.